We live in a visual world. We trust what we can see. A photograph is proof, a video is evidence. But there is something about sound that bypasses our logic and goes straight to our primal brain. A picture captures a moment, but audio captures a presence. Hearing a voice, especially one that is terrified, malevolent, or unexplainable, triggers a physiological response in us that an image never could. It's the vibration of the air, the crackle of the static, the very breath of a person or a thing that is no longer there. Tonight, we are not looking at blurry photos or shaky videos. We are listening to the echoes of the dark. We are examining 4 specific instances where a microphone captured something that should not exist, or something so evil that it defies human understanding. These are real recordings. They are held in police evidence lockers, military archives, and the darkest corners of the internet. From the guttural growls of a historic possession to the high-pitched weeping of a serial killer, these are 4 eerie voices captured in real audio recordings. Our first recording comes from one of the most famous and tragic cases of alleged demonic possession in history. If you have seen the movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose, you know the Hollywood version. But the real story of Anneliese Michel and the audio tapes left behind are far more disturbing than any special effect. Anneliese was a young German woman in the 1970s. She was devoutly religious, intelligent, and by all accounts, a kind person. But in her late teens, she began to experience seizures and hallucinations. She saw devil faces on people in the street. She heard voices telling her she was damned and would rot in hell. Medical treatment for epilepsy and psychosis failed to help her. In fact, her condition worsened. She began to drink her own urine, eat insects, and recoil violently from religious objects like crucifixes. Her family and 2 priests, Father Arnold Renz and Pastor Ernst Alt, became convinced she was possessed. Over the course of 10 months in 1975 and 1976, they performed 67 exorcism rites on her, and they recorded them. 42 audio tapes exist of these sessions. Listening to them is an endurance test for the human soul. You hear Anneliese, a frail woman who weighed only 68 pounds by the end, speaking with a voice that sounds physically impossible for her vocal cords to produce. It is a guttural, polyphonic growl, a sound like rocks grinding together deep in a cavern. It doesn't sound like a woman. It sounds like a wild animal or a very large man. On the tapes, the entity identifies itself by various names: Lucifer, Cain, Judas Iscariot, and even Hitler. In one particularly chilling segment, the priests ask the demon why it won't leave. The voice, snarling and spitting, screams, "Because I am not permitted." It implies a hierarchy, a command from something even worse. You can hear Anneliese growling, barking like a dog, and screaming in a language that sounds like distorted German mixed with Latin. What makes these recordings so terrifying is the context. This wasn't a movie set. This was a dying girl in a small house in Bavaria. When you listen, you aren't just hearing scary noises. You are hearing the documentation of a human being's slow, agonizing destruction. Whether you believe in demons or you believe in severe, untreated mental illness, the result is the same. The voice on that tape is the sound of pure suffering. Anneliese died of malnutrition and dehydration on July 1st, 1976. Her parents and the priest were charged with negligent homicide. The tapes were played in court as evidence. The defense tried to use them to prove the supernatural. The prosecution used them to prove negligence. But for anyone who has listened to the raw audio, the legal outcome matters less than the visceral horror of hearing a young girl's voice replaced by the growl of something that sounded ancient, angry, and undeniably evil. Serial killers are often depicted as cool, calculated predators. We imagine them as emotionless, speaking in low, threatening monotones. But in the early 1980s, the police in St. Paul, Minnesota, were hunted by a voice that shattered this archetype. They were dealing with a killer who sounded pathetic, hysterical, and terrified of himself. They called him the Weepy Voiced Killer. His name was Paul Michael Stephanie. Between 1980 and 1982, He murdered 3 women and attacked 2 others. But after his attacks, he would do something unthinkable. He would call the police to report his own crimes. The recordings of these 911 calls are some of the most unnerving pieces of audio in criminal history. The voice is high-pitched, shrill, and trembling with tears. He sounds like a child who has broken a vase, not a man who has just stabbed a woman to death with an ice pick. In one call, made after stabbing 18-year-old Kimberly Compton 61 times, he whispers through sobs, "I don't know why I had to stab her. I'm so upset about it." The dispatcher asks him where he is. He cries, "I can't stop myself. I keep killing so many people." The cognitive dissonance is what makes the skin crawl. We are programmed to associate crying with vulnerability, with victimhood. When we hear someone weeping, our instinct is to help them. But here, the weeping voice is the monster. He is apologizing for the murder while the blood is likely still on his hands. There is a specific recording from 1982 that captures the true horror of his psyche. He had just stabbed a woman named Barbara Simons. He calls the operator, his voice cracking, hyperventilating. "Please find me," he begs. "I just stabbed somebody with an ice pick. I can't stop myself. I keep killing somebody." The operator tries to keep him on the line, but he hangs up. This audio is terrifying because it strips away the monster mask and reveals the unstable, broken human underneath. It suggests that the killer wasn't in control, that he was a passenger in his own body, watching himself commit atrocities and then crying about it afterwards. It's a glimpse into a mind that is completely fractured. Stephanie was eventually caught after a victim, Denise Williams, fought back and smashed a glass bottle over his head. He confessed to the killings. He died in prison in 1998. But his voice remains, a shrill, weeping testament to the fact that sometimes the person crying for help is the one holding the knife. Our third story moves from the realm of crime to the realm of psychological warfare. This is an audio recording that was engineered specifically to terrify. It was designed to exploit deep cultural fears and drive men insane. And it worked. During the Vietnam War, the U.S. Military Psychological Operations Unit, PSYOP, created a campaign known as Operation Wandering Soul. In Vietnamese culture, there is a deep-seated belief that if a person dies far from home or is not buried with the proper rituals, their soul is doomed to wander the earth forever in pain. These are the wandering souls. The U.S. military decided to weaponize this belief. They brought in South Vietnamese voice actors and sound engineers to create a ghost tape. The result, known as Ghost Tape Number 10, is a masterpiece of audio horror. The recording begins with a weird, synthesized funeral music, a Buddhist funeral dirge played on distorted instruments. It creates an immediate atmosphere of dread and sickness. Then, a voice emerges from the static. It is a man's voice, but it is warped, filled with echo and reverb, as if coming from the bottom of a well or from the afterlife itself. The voice claims to be a dead Viet Cong soldier. He speaks to his living comrades in the jungle. He sounds agonized. He moans, "My friends, I have come back to let you know that I am dead. I am dead." He continues, pleading with them. "It is hell. I am in hell. Don't end up like me. Go home, friends, before it is too late." Underneath the voice, there are sound effects of women crying, wind howling, and strange, metallic screeching. The audio was played from helicopters equipped with massive loudspeakers, flying low over the jungle canopy at night. Imagine being a soldier, hiding in the pitch-black jungle, exhausted, terrified, and suddenly, from the sky, the voice of your dead ancestors begins to scream at you, telling you that you are doomed to eternal torment if you don't leave. The tape was so effective that it caused mass desertions, but it also backfired. It was so terrifying that it sometimes caused Viet Cong soldiers to fire wildly into the sky, revealing their positions, or to go into a frenzy of terror-fueled rage. Even the South Vietnamese allies of the U.S. were terrified of the tape, refusing to go near the helicopters that played it. Listening to Ghost Tape Number 10 today, even without the cultural context, is a disturbing experience. It sounds like a transmission from a nightmare. It is a reminder that the most effective weapon isn't always a bomb. Sometimes, it's a voice in the dark telling you that you are already dead. For our final story, we return to the domestic terror of a home invader. But this isn't just any criminal. This is the Golden State Killer, originally known as the East Area Rapist and the original Night Stalker. Before Joseph DeAngelo was identified in 2018, he was a ghost, a phantom who terrorized California in the 1970s and 80s, committing at least 13 murders and 50 rapes. He was a master of psychological torture. He would break into homes, wake couples up with a flashlight, tie them up, and then spend hours in the house, eating their food and threatening them. But his terror didn't end when he left the house. He liked to linger. He would call his victims, sometimes days later, sometimes years later. The recordings of these phone calls are the definition of eerie. They are brief, but they carry a weight of menace that is suffocating. One of the most famous recordings was captured on an answering machine in 1978. The phone rings. A woman picks up, or the machine picks up. There is a silence. Then, a sound that is barely human. It is a heavy, rhythmic breathing. But it's not just breathing, it's a performance. He is panting, almost like an animal in heat, or a person on the verge of a breakdown. Then, a voice whispers. It is a harsh, clenched jaw whisper, designed to disguise his natural tone. He says, "Gonna kill you, gonna kill you, gonna kill you." He repeats it over and over in a rhythm. "Gonna kill you, gonna kill you." Then he hangs up. The audio quality is grainy, but the hatred in the voice is crystal clear. This man wasn't calling for money. He wasn't calling to negotiate. He was calling to remind the victim that he was still there, still watching, still owning their fear. In another instance, known as the "Is Ray there?" call, he called a victim who had survived an attack years prior. He asks, in a chillingly calm, almost polite voice, "Is Ray there?" The victim says no. The killer pauses, and then the facade drops. He begins that same heavy, menacing breathing. He wanted her to know it was him. He wanted to ruin her sense of safety years after the crime. Joseph DeAngelo was a former police officer. He knew how to blend in. He lived a normal life in the suburbs while making these calls. When you listen to that whisper, "Gonna kill you," you are hearing the voice of a man who walked among us, who enforced the law by day and became a living nightmare by night. It is the sound of pure, sadistic predation. Audio recordings are unique ghosts. A photo can fade. A memory can blur. But a voice on a tape loop is eternal. Anneliese Michel is still screaming in that room in Bavaria. The Weepy Voiced Killer is still sobbing into a payphone. The wandering soul is still moaning from the helicopter speakers. And the Golden State Killer is still whispering into the receiver. These recordings are not just evidence of crimes or events. They are evidence of the darkness that exists on the periphery of our lives. They remind us that when the lights go out and silence falls, we are not always alone. Sometimes, if you listen closely enough, the silence speaks back.